Welcome to the 24th of November version of Boss Books. I'm your host, Emily Bauman. We have Isabel Fro in Germany. And if you're watching the replay, you're going to learn a lot today because we are talking about how to build vivid characters. So, whether you're writing a memoir, whether you're writing a how-to book, something in between, you're going to be describing people, right? And this is very important to making the reader connect with who you're talking about so that their imagination is activated and they feel like they can see them. So, just like we make cinematic scenes, a big part of your writing is going to be honing the skill of descriptions. And it's something you can work on for a lifetime. We're going to talk today about the 10 most important ways and like easy tips and tricks to write amazing descriptions. And then I'm going to give you an example of like a lackluster, kind of boring, flat boy meets girl scene. And then I'm going to show you how I would soup it up using the 10 lessons, right? That we just talked about, the 10 tools. So feel free to take notes and we'll ask questions right after. But does that sound good? Yeah. Awesome. And like I said, memoir, this is equally important. And I will just say before we jump in, my rule, and when I'm editing books, I write this all the time. The first time you introduce a character or a person, you need to describe them physically. You need to describe that boy meets girl or mentor meets student or whatever relationship it is. You need to describe the person physically. And a lot of us skim over that because we're like, I know what they look like. And then we forget the reader has never met this person. Because they're such a like important part of you, sometimes we forget to jump into the reader's seat and see it from their perspective. So you get to play Hollywood director. You get to pretend like this is a screenplay for a moment. So it's not necessarily the same approach as when you're writing scenes that are about your deep evolution. This is about description. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just jump right into the 10 top tips for writing vivid human descriptions. Number one, your point of view character. So that's maybe, whoa, that's maybe you. Maybe that is you in the past, right? Or it can be a character. Don't describe everything. Describe what matters. What is sparking desire, curiosity that makes it vivid? Or what is sparking revulsion? Like, did the person not wash their hair? Are you seeing dandruff and like dry, cracked lips? And you're like, ooh, they're not really taking care of themselves here. This person is supposed to be this, but I'm noticing things that matter to me, like moisturizer, having cleanliness. So don't try and describe everything. Describe what matters most. And that's interesting because it's going to be different for every writer, every person. Someone may not care about greasy hair. Maybe they used to be a rock star and they think greasy hair is just normal. But if the person from the point of view person is very clean and loves things to be beautiful and smell good, then dirty shoes and like this and that is going to bother them. So desire, repulsion, these are very strong emotions. And if it's a first impression, that's probably the subtle details that they're going to pick up on. Okay. Next, we want to anchor the description in emotion and not just visuals. The reader should feel the character's inner temperature rising, not just see the person's hair color and their clothing. So, yes, hair color is important. Say, for example, as a kid, you move to a new town. It's the first day of school, and you're describing how you step into the classroom and you notice your new teacher. And you notice they're wearing really intensely polished Oxford brogues on their feet, and they have a super cheesy Christmas sweater, and their hair is like stiff from hairspray. They move their head, and the hair is stiff. And you're like, it's 2005. What is going on here? Have I stepped back into a time machine? So then you feel the characters cringe and you feel the characters shut down because we focused on shoes, an ugly sweater, and hair that's not moving because of the hairspray. So we're feeling the reaction to those things like, ew, maybe this kid moved from the city to a small town, the mom got a divorce. And so we want to feel the reaction. And that's why it's important what you pick to describe. It has to be something that matters. No one's going to react to jeans and a white t-shirt unless maybe your point of view main character is obsessed with James Dean and Taylor Swift and it makes them think of the lyrics and then they fall in love. They're like, oh my gosh. So heat, freezing, cringing, opening, closing. What is a description making the person react? So I'm kind of leading into this, but use one unforgettable detail instead of five generic ones. A chipped nail, a nervous thumb rubbing annoyingly. That can show a lot more about the person being introduced than a whole paragraph that's just about they have green eyes, they are very average height, their outfit was cute, but you know, you can hone in on something that shows rather than tells who this person is. If they're stuck in a time portal, maybe they're always wearing a certain style and it shows, oh, that's the era when that person's partner died and they never got over it and they're stuck there, you know? So choose something significant and focus in on that first. And like I said, with a nervous thumb rub, it can be something they're doing. Oftentimes we forget that when you're describing someone, you can also describe details of their actions. Okay. So I encourage you, number four, let the relationship be shown. So it's not just about their physical appearance, but what they're evoking. Safety, danger, irritation, lust, confusion. Let us see how this person walks through the world and generally how the public responds to them or how this person reacts to them. And that's important. So, emotions and reactions, relationship. An example of that could be you step into the classroom, first day of school at a new school, you're 9 years old, you see the teacher, and maybe you back away. And that will show the reader that you feel like you don't belong. Like your relationship is, do you then walk over to the desk with hunched shoulders, or do you flip your hair because you're like a sassy girl? Do you like flip your hair, look all the mean girls in the eyes, glare at the boys, and then take a seat? Are you meek? Or like, do you say, yes, Mrs. Snyder, and then take a seat? Right? So, relationship. Next, number five. Okay, so this metaphor, the use of metaphor is magical. It is what sets apart the beginner writers from the more advanced writers. It's what makes people really feel like they're in the scene with you, but you can't do it all the time. They have to be used sparingly and intentionally and never in a, I would say, predictable way, if that makes sense. So, in the makeover and kind of the description makeover I'll give you before, I'll use a metaphor and you'll see how it works, you know? Were her eyes sparkling like the first snow? Were her skin freckles popping off like what's something interesting that you could say? Her freckles popped off like popcorn or I don't know. But using metaphors is really going to help you bring that visual to life because everyone knows what popcorn looks like. Everyone knows what snow is. And so it's like you're gathering up a whole world of meaning and offering it in one sentence because there's this powerful world of associations with the metaphor, with rainbows. Like I'm a big fan of nature metaphors because we inherently respond to them in a visceral way because we react to nature powerfully with our bodies. And so as readers, we bring all that reaction to the metaphor on the page. So as a writer, you get to take advantage of that and really use nature metaphors. Was he bristly like a badger who'd been woken up too early in the springtime? And we're like, oh yeah, we know what it's like to be an animal coming out of a cave, not wanting to be there. Yeah. Okay, so this is what the pros do, my loves. It is about micro movements. When you're describing someone for the first time, maybe it's just three sentences, but you can show with movement whether they're annoyed, whether they are hurried, whether they're impatient, whether they're a coffee addict who is constantly working on their espresso. Do they clutch it like a rich woman clutches her Birkin bag? Like, is it part of their identity? They're holding a coffee, and you know that it was like an $8 pour over obnoxious barista who made it. So, choosing that one thing and really zoning in on it can be paired effectively with tapping a pen or any kind of other micro movement. This really helps bring the character out of a flat 3D experience and make them come alive like they're in a movie. Okay, if you only remember one thing from this list, I hope you remember micro movements and emotion. Micro movements and emotion. Flipping hair, right? Tapping pen, clutching a cup of coffee with jittery fingers. It's really, really important stuff. And you'll notice that at first you might have to think about it when you're editing. You go back and be like, oh, I did a description. Now I'm going to edit it and make it kind of follow what Emily's saying, and add in some more things. But the cool thing is that the next time you're writing, you're going to notice you do this stuff automatically. Okay, number 7 out of 10. I encourage you to layer in sensory texture beyond visual. So not just what they're looking like, but what is the soundscape? Is there thumping bass music from a bar nearby? Do you hear the loudspeaker? Are you in a police station? Like, what does it sound like? What is the smell? Temperature is always very important, and the energy of someone entering the room, because people are always felt before they're seen, right? So, what can you layer in that will help us feel this person using details? For example, just off the top of my head, if you were meeting a boyfriend for the first time, like say it's a first date scene and you're at the beach and it's like a surfer guy and you don't usually date surfer guys, but you're giving this guy a chance. And maybe there's some predictable Bob Marley playing at the speakers at the bar, and usually you would roll your eyes, but this time it feels right and you're like grooving a little bit. That will help us see that you're into this guy, even though it's not your usual kind of dude. You see? So using surprise of sound, scent, temperature, energy can help us feel you feeling them. Lighting is also one of my favorites. Like fluorescent lights, if you literally say under the pale fluorescent lights, it will give us that cold, stark energy. But if you talk about warm sunlight beaming in the room and hitting them, then we get a completely different energy about how you're perceiving this person as you see them for the first time. Okay, contrast is memorable. Beauty requires contrast. Even if we're talking about ugly stuff, the writing is going to be beautiful if there's contrast. Contrast is vital to good writing and good descriptions. Something soft against something sharp, stillness against chaos, music that's calming against someone's internal thoughts that are frenetic and pulsing. So if your description, say that your character or you are stressed out and anxious, and you meet someone who feels centered and soft, like they've been doing 1,000 hours of meditation for 20 years, that's going to be memorable because it's almost like you're hitting against a wall of calm and you're like, oh. And it's abrasive, but in a good way. And by contrast, say that you're describing a scene where you come out of meditation, maybe out of a 10-day Vipassana retreat, and you're going out in the world and you meet someone for the first time who's going to be important to you. Maybe it's like a new boss at a new job, and they are frenetic, and you find yourself like retreating backwards and like putting your hands on your belly as you describe them for the first time. Contrast is memorable. And zooming out for a second, real people misread each other at first, right? We can't know everything. You writing this passage know the person well that's being described, but I dare you to do something. Pretend that you don't know everything about them. Pretend your whole relationship hasn't already happened. Pretend and imagine and use your creative genius to not know them fully so that you can hold back because it makes them more human and it gives room to reveal. So that's number 10. Don't describe everything now. Leave room for revelation. Save something for the next paragraph. Save something for the evolution, something surprising about them that we never would have known from that first encounter. Um, and like I said at the beginning, this is true of memoir. This is true of all genres that you're writing. You have to describe people. So when I say character, maybe it's your first husband, or maybe it's the trainer who really let you down, or a best friend that you had to let go. They're all still characters in your book. So they reveal themselves slowly, and that allows us as a reader to learn and grow with you. All right. Any questions at this point, Isabel? How is it landing? Let's see if and I will post this for sure um in our space. Okay. Amazing. It helps a lot. Perfect. I'm so glad to hear that. Now I'm going to give you an example because nothing brings all of these suggestions to life better than an example. Okay, imagine that there are two interns or a guy working at a legal office, and he's at work and he's going into the conference room, and this is what happens. Ethan walked into the conference room and saw her sitting at the table. She had long, pale blonde hair and wore a simple white blouse. She looked up and smiled politely. He introduced himself, half distracted by her beauty, and sat down across from her. The meeting went normally, and they talked about the new project. Later that afternoon, he saw her again in the hallway, and they exchanged another polite greeting before going back to work, and he wondered if there could be more under the surface. So this is highly lackluster. I'm laughing as I'm like, it hurts to even have written it. But, and I guess I made a run-on sentence here in the last sentence. But the point is, nothing important happened. We don't feel any tension. We don't feel any emotion. We didn't zoom in on any particular feature of this girl that he's meeting. She's beautiful, but we can't picture her. She had long, pale blonde hair and a simple white blouse. All I hear is forgettable. I don't feel anything. And I'm sure that you don't either, because it's just like, I saw a girl and she was pretty, right? So compare it to this. Ethan stepped into the conference room already half distracted, flipping through notes on his phone and expecting yet another humdrum legal shakedown until he felt a shift in the air. She sat at the far end of the table, posture soft but certain, like she fully belonged to herself and wasn't in the habit of leaning in for approval. When she tilted her head up, the overhead light caught her hair in a way that made him blink. Her hair was so pale and silky, it looked like it had flowed through a river in Eden and onto her head. And for a breath too long, he found himself wanting to touch it, just to see if it felt as miraculous as it looked. Her smile up at him wasn't polite, it was curious, a quiet spark that suggested she noticed more than she said. He felt his throat warm as he introduced himself. Hi, I'm Ethan, and tried to sound like a man who did not just lose every coherent thought because of a stranger. Hours later, he wasn't expecting to see her again, especially not in the long beige hallway outside the copy room. She turned the corner carrying a stack of papers against her chest, hair slightly mussed from the Louisiana afternoon humidity. A single pale strand stuck to her freckled cheek. He watched, enwrapped, while pretending to prepare a stack of manila envelopes for the mailroom. She laughed under her breath at the stubborn paper gem she was wrestling with, an unguarded sound, bright and soft enough to skim something tender in him. When she looked up at him this time, recognition flickered between them. Not polite this time, rather something familiar, like the first page of something neither of them had admitted they were reading yet. So we have two metaphors, and we have a simile. It had flown right in Eden onto her head. Metaphor uses like or as, and a simile says something is, just like it is a sunset. Her smile was a sunset. Her hair had flowed from Eden onto her head. And we see reactions, right? He tried to sound like a man who didn't lose every thought because of a stranger. It made him blink, micro movements, blinking. She seemed like she fully belonged to herself, and he could tell. And we see he was half distracted, flipping through notes on his phone. So we can really see him. We can picture this guy. And he felt his throat get warm, and he was acting, right? So, and then we hear her laughing. He notices her hair again. He's really obsessed with her hair. But this is his wanting to touch. This is his relationship to her. It's like he wants to see if this silky, incredible feminine hair is as magical as it looks. And of course, on the outside, there's this, oh, I'm Ethan. And then he sits down and they have a meeting. And the contrast is that he is so befuddled. We get to see the inside, and that contrast is delicious because she can't tell, but then they click and we see a flicker of recognition, something familiar. So that's far more engaging. And yeah, there's way more words because it takes time to describe, but you're zoning in on a quality. She seems heavenly to him. Her hair is like this symbol, and she's human at the same time. It get mussed up, and her laugh then, oh my goodness, he's like really into her laugh. So I hope that shows you how just a little bit of effort, relationship, reactions, details, it can be someone picking their nails and maybe it's really annoying. Whatever the details are, let them be over and over again, vivid, and just go with it. If you have an instinct and you're like, this is weird, go with it. Any questions, reactions, anything unclear? And I'll just say, if you were to do that from the perspective of a memoir, instead of saying his, it would just be mine, right? First person. And you can have first person and then be a little bit omniscient, like zoom out and say stuff like, I had no idea then that this would impact the rest of my professional career. That would be first person omniscient, kind of like an all-knowing zoom out. But really, we want to stay close to the action. We want to stay close to the scene and just let the reader discover this beautiful person along with you, or discover this horrendous, toxic person or narcissist. Whoever it is, my other wisdom that I repeat a lot is stay close to the action and just let it unfold as organically as you can without like everything, but don't pretend to when you're writing. Yeah. Uh-huh. The difference of how you describe the characters, Isabel said, is so obvious. I feel the way you do it needs a lot of practice, but it makes such a difference. Yes, exactly. And all we have is time to practice. All we have is time to do a draft and say, this is good enough for a draft, keep writing and come back to it. And then ask some questions like, how am I reacting in the scene to this character? Does it make me feel something? And reading out loud is the best trick to see if a description is flat or vivid. Is it evoking something or not? It will be super obvious when you read it out loud. That's why I just read that out loud to you. Yeah. And when you read a really good description of a first encounter, it feels like even the walls are contributing to the mood, and the air is reflective of how they're feeling. And I mean, technically, it's called a pathetic fallacy when the weather reflects how someone is feeling. But the floor tile, if the person is obsessed with vintage things and they walk into a restaurant and the floor tile is this gorgeous ancient Moroccan pattern that they have a tattoo of, it can lend an air of like mystery and synchronicity. Everything gets to contribute. And we don't need to be super obvious about it, but just details and specificity, texture, it all matters so much. And you have lots of chances to revise. You have lots of chances to do it better and practice, and then add another metaphor. And then, maybe you're making dinner one time and you're like, oh, that's the perfect metaphor for that description. Finally, the reader is going to understand Jack because it's like someone who always has a crow sitting on his shoulder. And if I could just say, like, Captain Jack Sparrow, like whatever it is, you can be moving through your day. And if you're just contemplating and letting the questions run, you're going to be writing while you're living and improving and editing and describing better and better just as you move through your day. So, yeah, I'm excited for that experience to come alive for everybody in Boss Books. Hmm. Wow, it's 333 here, which feels very magical. I was like, that feels like everything I have to share. So, opening it up for general questions and would love to hear how it's going with you, Isabel. I will just press the stop recording button to keep it tight and